Welcome to the Nameless.
I thought it was rats until I heard it whisper. It happened late, sometime after midnight, when the house was quiet enough that every small sound felt amplified. I was half asleep on the couch, television muted, phone glowing dim in my hand. That was when I heard it again, scratching, slow and deliberate, coming from somewhere beneath the living room floor. I remember sighing, more annoyed than scared, already mentally adding "call an exterminator" to my list for the morning. Then the scratching stopped, and something else took its place. A soft, breathy sound. A voice, low and close, like someone speaking through the floorboards. It said my name. At the time, I lived alone in a small, single-story house just outside a quiet town in the Midwest. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, built sometime in the late 70s. It had that faint smell of old wood and dust no matter how much I cleaned. I'd rented it because it was cheap and close to work, and because I liked how quiet the neighborhood was. Most of the houses were owned by older couples who kept to themselves. At night, the streetlights buzzed softly, and the loudest sounds were usually distant traffic or someone's dog barking a few blocks away. I'd been there for about 6 months when the noises started. At first, they were easy to ignore, little creaks and pops at night, the kind every old house makes when it cools down. Occasionally, I'd hear something that sounded like movement under the floor, light scratching or a faint thump. I assumed it was mice or maybe raccoons. The landlord had warned me the crawl space was old and not well sealed. During the day, everything felt normal. Sunlight poured in through the windows, dust motes floating lazily in the air. I worked long hours, came home tired, made simple dinners, and watched TV until I fell asleep. The house never felt threatening. If anything, it felt a little lonely. I didn't have many visitors, and most nights I went to bed early. The sounds were mostly at night, always subtle, always brief. I'd lie in bed listening, trying to decide if what I was hearing was real or just my mind filling in the silence. Sometimes I'd get up and walk around, pressing my ear to the floor, feeling slightly foolish. The moment I moved, the sounds would stop. That alone should have bothered me more than it did. One night, maybe a week after I first noticed the scratching, I heard what sounded like dragging, slow, uneven, like something being pulled across dirt. It came from beneath the bedroom floor. I froze, staring at the ceiling, heart thudding. After a minute, it stopped. The silence that followed felt heavy, like the house was waiting. I told myself animals could make all kinds of noises. I fell asleep eventually, but my dreams were restless and shallow. I finally mentioned it to a coworker, joking about my haunted floor. She laughed and told me to get traps. I bought a few that weekend and set them around the edges of the rooms, near vents and corners. For a couple of nights, the house was completely quiet. I remember feeling oddly disappointed, like I'd imagined the whole thing. Then, the whispering started. The first time, I wasn't sure what I'd heard. I was brushing my teeth, the bathroom light humming softly, when I thought I heard someone speaking from the other room. I turned off the faucet and listened. Nothing. The house settled with a familiar creak. I shrugged it off. A few nights later, I was in bed, scrolling through my phone, when I heard a faint murmur beneath me. It was too low to make out words, but it had rhythm, like speech. I held my breath, listening hard. The sound faded, replaced by that familiar scratching. My skin prickled, but I told myself it was just the pipes or the wind. The next time, there was no mistaking it. I was lying on the couch again, lights off, only the TV casting flickering shadows across the room. The scratching came, louder than before, directly beneath the coffee table. I sat up, annoyed, ready to bang on the floor. Before I could move, it stopped. In the sudden quiet, a voice drifted up through the boards. Soft. Careful. Hello. My heart slammed so hard I thought I might be sick. I sat perfectly still, every muscle tense. The voice wasn't loud. It sounded close, as if the floor between us was thin. I waited for laughter, for footsteps, for anything that would make sense. Nothing came. I whispered back without really thinking. Who's there? There was a pause, long enough that I wondered if I'd imagined the whole thing. Then the voice spoke again. You can hear me. I don't know why I didn't run. Part of me felt frozen, but another part felt oddly calm, like I was watching something happen to someone else. My mind raced through explanations. A prank? Someone in the crawl space? A neighbor somehow? None of it fit. Get out, I said, my voice shaking. I'm calling the police. The silence that followed felt deliberate, heavy. I waited, phone in my hand, thumb hovering over the screen. Minutes passed. Nothing else happened. Eventually, I convinced myself it had been some kind of auditory hallucination, stress, lack of sleep. I didn't call anyone. I went to bed with the lights on. Over the next few days, I tried to avoid being alone in the house. I stayed late at work, visited friends, came home exhausted. At night, I kept the TV on low, just enough noise to fill the silence. Still, the sounds continued. Scratching, movement, and sometimes barely audible, whispering that I couldn't quite understand. Once, I thought I heard crying. I finally called my landlord. He sounded irritated, but agreed to come by and check the crawlspace. He arrived on a Saturday morning, cheerful and dismissive. He pulled back the access panel in the hallway floor and shined a flashlight down into the darkness. I watched from a few feet away, my stomach tight. Looks fine, he said after a moment. Probably animals. I'll have someone seal it up better. Did you hear anything? I asked. He frowned. Hear what? I didn't press it. That night, the house was louder than it had ever been. Scratching echoed through the floors, moving from room to room, like something pacing. I sat on my bed, lights on, knees pulled to my chest. I kept telling myself it would stop. It always stopped. Then the whisper came again, clearer than before. I don't like the light, it said. I felt tears sting my eyes, more from fear than sadness. What do you want? I asked, my voice barely a breath. Another pause. Then, you're heavy. That was the moment something inside me broke. I grabbed my keys and phone and left the house without turning off the lights. I slept in my car that night, parked outside a grocery store, jumping at every sound. The next day, I went back with a friend. In daylight, the house looked harmless. We walked through every room, checked the doors and windows. Nothing seemed out of place. But when I showed her the hallway access panel, she noticed something I hadn't. The screws were loose, and there were faint marks in the wood around the edges, like it had been opened and closed many times. I moved out a week later. I never went back alone. While packing, I kept the windows open and music playing. I avoided looking at the floors. On my last day, as I carried the final box to my car, I heard a soft knock from inside the house. 3 slow taps, coming from beneath the living room floor. I didn't respond. Years have passed since then. I live in an apartment now, several floors up. Sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet, I think I hear something beneath me. Not scratching, just a soft, familiar whisper rising through the floor, waiting for me to answer.